Welcome to Your Two Cents, the podcast. I'm Alicia McCarville.
And I'm Sylvia Behrens, and this podcast is made in partnership with the credit unions because they are just as obsessed with talking about money as we are.
I know all too well, unfortunately, that life can just throw wrenches in the plans that you have. And I was stuck reacting to that situation. And today we're going to talk about people that are going to really help us prepare for those things.
I love it. So we have Vicki, a career counselor from St. Mary's University, and Shannon, who is a financial expert from credit unions from PEI, and they're going to tell us how to get ahead of the curveballs before they happen.
This is Your Two Cents, the podcast proudly made by Bicoastal in partnership with credit unions. When I lost my job, I was thrown into chaos and panic. And I was living paycheck to paycheck, and I had quite literally no idea how to navigate that.
And I'm a super planner, but life was always going to throw you some curveballs. And if you are not sporty like me and don't know how to catch those curveballs, you could use a little bit of help. So today we are so excited to be talking to Shannon Kennedy from credit unions and Victoria Jeha from St. Mary's University, who is a career counselor, about how to move through the unexpected things in life. So thank you for being here.
Of course, yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Here.
I mean this wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for being here to have this conversation, because it's near and dear to both of our hearts for different reasons. But what we're hoping to get out of this, and what we're hoping, is that people will have an idea of how to navigate and even feel empowered when, those wrenches get thrown in the plan of what you thought you had, how much money you thought you had, what your career is and what it could be. And I remember feeling so absolutely lost in those moments that it would have been really helpful to have some of these questions answered and just to even have resources to how to navigate that. So yeah, we really, 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 really appreciate it.
I love this too, because I think so often, to Alicia's point, that we're reacting rather than being proactive, and it's really easy to go like, let's put our heads in the sand and not think about what's going to happen in the future. But the world is a different place than it was even when we were, trying to figure out what we wanted to do with our lives. People reinvent themselves so many times over. So having someone from the financial literacy side of things and then someone from the career side of things is really important to us, because when those tough things happen, the first thing you want to do is go, okay, I know I've got tools in my toolkit, rather than freaking out and not knowing where to go. So I want to start with you, Vicki, about, are there tips and tricks on sort of when that first blow comes and you're in a situation that you didn't expect to be in? Do you have any tips on your side as a career counselor on what someone might be able to do?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably too many tips, so I'll try and be concise.
Never too many.
We'll take them all.
I'm happy there's someone that's financially literate here, because I am not, so that's not my specialty. But in terms of tips and tricks for dealing with the unexpected in terms of career, from a career counseling perspective, what we're trying to do in a session, for example, with a client, is really just understand, who are you? And then we can understand, maybe, what do I value? What's interesting and motivating to me? What skills have I kind of picked up along the way in my life? And how can all of those be my filter for what opportunities are out there, instead of trying to sort of stick yourself into a box out there? So I think the tip that I would have is really get to know yourself, and maybe try and find someone that can help you navigate that or explore that with a little bit more depth, so that you feel that there are more options for you, and you are more aware of what you have to offer.
That's incredible. I know two people in my life who, one is a doctor and one is a lawyer. The doctor has never practiced medicine and the lawyer has never practiced law. And they found different careers because they actually took those skills and thought outside the box. My husband went to school to be a teacher. He's never, outside of his practicum, taught a day in his life as a teacher. So I think we're really pushed a lot of times to think like, this is my degree, I'm going to do this job with this degree because that is what we're expected to do. So I think it's really cool to talk about that transferable skills piece, because I think a lot of people go, oh my God, I lost my job, but I am X job. No, like, you're a person. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, the transferable skills, I think, for me was the biggest. Like, when I lost my job, realizing that, like, in my brain, that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life. So I couldn't do anything outside of that. And then when I left it, and I was like, oh, I actually enjoy a lot more than just what I was doing. That was a helpful moment. I didn't have somebody to help me in that moment. So I think that tip of finding somebody to kind of support you and realizing that it's broader than just that one path that you have. Now for me, I'm going to redirect this to you. For me, when I lost my job, thinking about a career wasn't even top of my list at that point, because immediately I was like, my money. Like, I have to pay bills. I have been living my life a specific way. Although we were two incomes, we had never been a single income, my partner and I. When it came to bills, like piling up and like knowing how to navigate and who to talk to, is there an order of bill payment that you would suggest for people, or tips and tricks to talking to your lenders or people to navigate that so you don't put yourself, one, further in debt, or you don't absolutely trash your credit like I did?
Yeah, and very common too. I think the first place to start is to remember that every person that you're dealing with is also a person. So the first thing I would do if I found myself in that situation is I would pick up the phone and I would contact every person who I'm going to owe money to. I'm going to call them up and I'm going to say, hey, this is my financial situation. Here's what I've been paying. I'm unable to do that. I'm able to pay $50 less. I'm not going to be able to pay you for the next 3 months, whatever your situation is, and I would negotiate what debt I have to owe them, or I owe to them rather. I would negotiate that and see if I can come up with a different term or a different plan for the meantime. And my advice with that piece specifically is if you are on the phone with someone and your answer is no, you say no problem, you hang up that phone and you call back the next day and talk to someone different. 9 times out of 10, you're going to find that the person on the other end of the phone is going to want to do everything they can to make sure that you are able to pay your bills back, because the organization who they work for wants to make some of the money back rather than none of the money back. So always advocate for yourself. It can be very intimidating. It's a very scary position to find yourself in, but the people that you're talking to are human. They do it every day. They probably have received 20 other phone calls that are very similar to yours. So don't feel intimidated by that process. And in terms of order of operations, I would say make sure that your absolute needs are covered. So things like your housing, your groceries, if you require a vehicle, which most of us do, to get to and from places, those are the things that you want to make sure that are covered. And then on the other end of things, see where you can cut back. Do you need both your Netflix and your Crave subscription? Probably not. So maybe we take away one for the month, or maybe we cut them both down for 6 months until we know our situation is a little bit more established.
I don't think I realized how much power I did have when it came to negotiating. We talked about this on like the first season that we had together, was that I originally thought it was like strict cut rules, and very much not realizing it was a person on the other side of the phone.
That's
being
right.
like, this is where I'm at, this is where I need help. And I think there's power in that transparency, because it's such a shameful thing to call and admit I don't, but if you don't call, they're going to call. And I think that also carries a different level of shame and like guilt. So I remember making phone calls and feeling empowered after I made them, because one, it made me feel like I was taking responsibility, and there are some lenders that I have a lot more respect for than I did before I went through this, because of how helpful and kind and great they were in those situations.
Absolutely. I always tell people calling whoever you owe money to is basically like Grey's Anatomy, right? Like you go in for a surgery and you're super nervous because you don't know what's going to happen. It's unfamiliar. You're scared. You know nothing about medicine. But to the surgeons that are doing your surgery, it's just their job. They do it every day. They're probably over your surgery talking about what they had for dinner last night and what they're going to do with their kids on the weekend. And it's the same for finances.
That's a really great point, because I actually have developed like a strong love for calling the CRA, because for whatever reason I get always the nicest people, and sometimes it's just a question that I have. It's not always necessarily on the other side. But when I was younger, we sold everything we owned. We moved out of the country to pursue my husband's hockey career, and it was the year of the recession. Everything folded. Next thing you know, we're out of jobs. We have no belongings. We have no roof over our head. And I still had a student loan to pay. And I remember being so terrified. I did not know what to do. And I put off calling the CRA for the longest time. And then finally I called and I was like, I have a student loan. I owe you money. I don't know what to do. And they were like, cool. So does every other student who has done similar things to you. And so having a plan and understanding, I always think about the movie Confessions of a Shopaholic. She runs from the bill payer for so long, and then it consumes her life. And then the minute she kind of like succumbs to the fact that this person's actually like gonna try and help her, it's such a great moment. But I now, if I have like even the tiniest question like that's tax related, I'm like, I'm calling the CRA. These are my buds. Like they're here to help. And I love the hack of nicely hanging up, and trying to get a new person, because you're not always going to get the best people on the other line, but that doesn't mean there's not another person there. And usually they've all had real life situations happen to them, and I can completely understand. So I love, but I've never thought about it like a surgeon. You're right. They're like, we're having dinner. We're talking about Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah, it was so helpful for me too. I always feel like they're going to be punitive or something. And yeah, you're right. They're there to help.
There's so much shame attached with debt, and there's so much shame in the uncertainty of our finances, but there doesn't need to be. I do financial literacy classes in my community all the time, and the first thing I always ask everyone is who has experience in this room with debt, and every single hand goes up.
Yeah.
So it's something we all go through.
Yeah.
So this is obviously near and dear to like my heart. So like the experience that I've been through, I've gone through these phone calls, and then what is next? Like, so what are like the next steps, the resources that somebody that has just lost their job, and it might not have been what they thought they were going to do for the rest of their life, but like we've got bills to pay, we've got debt to do. What are the resources for somebody like me in that situation to kind of hit the ground running when it comes to finding another job?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll probably have a bit of a counselor response to this.
Yeah.
Because of course losing your job comes with disappointment, maybe some grief. You know, the unexpected is not what we often wished for. So that side often has to be taken care of. So the first thing I would say to do is make sure your support system, the people around you that can listen, are there so that you have an outlet for that.
Cry
I think
into
that's
pizza. That's what I did.
Of
I literally
course.
did. I remember like they handed me the sheet and they were like, we'd prefer if you didn't talk to anybody about this yet. And I was like, I'm going to call my husband and I'm going to call my mom. And I remember, and then my best friend showed up that night with pizza and treats. And it was very much that like moment of like, it is. I love that you touch on that, because it is a very panicked, sad, grief-filled like moment to be like,
Yeah.
what do I do?
What do I
What
do?
do I do?
Yeah. And sounds like you have the best friend of the year or life.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing to do, to show up with pizza.
Yeah.
So yeah, have your people around you, have your support system around you. And when we think of career, it's an umbrella term, right? So within a career and that arc of a certain field, perhaps, there might be tons of different roles and occupations. So what you do next in the short term might not be what you want to do long term, but it's okay to have a short-term bridge to get you where you want to go. So what do I need? What do I need to prioritize? Maybe it's some bills. Maybe I just need that job right away. And go to your network, I would say, as well. So you got your support system for your emotions, your grief. Then who do you know, based on your other jobs that you've done, that you could call up or connect with? I would also see what you can write down in terms of your transferable skills. What have I picked up on in this job that I just did? Because that's not leaving you after you end the job. You still get to walk away with the skills, no matter how it ended. So take note of those skills, what's transferable, what can I get more immediately? And then I would set up some sort of appointment at Nova Scotia Works if you're in the community and you're not in school anymore. If you're at St. Mary's and you're a graduate, that's within that 3-year window, you can set up a career counseling appointment. And we have coaches as well that can help you with those really practical job search, networking, LinkedIn strategies that'll help you actually kind of land the job. But for the more long term, you could maybe set up with a career counselor as well. Finances are tight. Often those resources do exist in the community. So Teamworks is a great one. Nova Scotia Works is also great. Check out the job fairs. People forget about those. So that's somewhere that you could go to just kind of connect with employers right away and have that short-term and long-term strategy.
I like that. The short term, long term.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I'm putting myself back into that position that I did find a short term, which was I'm very, very, very grateful for. And it gave me a lot of freedom. But yeah, trying to figure out how to navigate, not running into something. I was so afraid of trying to find something that I was not going to, like I needed money so badly that I was like, I'm going to find something I hate. And then I ended up luckily finding something that I enjoyed, but it was very much short term. And I think we think long term, and it has to be long term, and it has to be career specific. And yeah, I love that idea of like figuring out what that short term and long term looks like for you.
One thing that I did when I was thinking about changing my career, because I did leave a corporate marketing life and pivoted pretty severely into, I mean, I guess in terms of like comfort and stability and all those things, I actually before I exited the situation, I went and took a journal and I went to a dog park. I did not have a dog yet. And I wrote down like everything that I was good at that I liked. I wrote down everything that I was good at that I didn't like. I wrote down the things that I wanted to be better at. And it just time and time again, like the things that kept surfacing were the things I really wanted to be doing. And then that's where I channeled my energy. And I think it doesn't really matter what stage in your career in. You're often so busy just like working and moving through life that you're not really stopping to think about like, what do I actually want? And when you lean into, it's so cliche, but I think it's with age and time, it's the truth.
Yeah.
The more authentic you are to yourself, even if you need to take a job in the short term to just keep paying your bills, there are going to be jobs out there that are going to lean more towards what you're looking for to bridge that gap.
I was bartending at a Legion, and it like that experience was just so much more joyful for me than that corporate 9-to-5 that I was working at. It really helped me realize how transferable my skills were. You know, going from working as a manager of a facility to bartending for basically seniors in a Legion was just felt so contrasting, but there were so many parts of what I had done that transferred into that, and I found a part of myself within that loss that I had suppressed for a long time, like not getting to experience like truly, you know, joyful work. Like, yeah.
And when it comes to long-term career sustainability, what we're looking for is a match between your values and your interests with that position. So your values are what you find meaningful, what you actually care about. Your interests are the things that keep you curious and, you know, authentically wondering. So if those two things can be met in a position, whether that's a short term where maybe some of them are met or long term where more of them are met, you're going to find more ability to stay and more satisfaction. So getting to know, what do I care about truly? Is it connection with other people? Is it being able to be helpful? Is it time to spend with my dog and my family? And what am I interested in? What would I do a TED Talk about if I had the opportunity? Those are going to help you navigate moving in the direction that you want to go.
It can feel really hard to know the questions you want to ask about money, let alone actually asking them. Credit unions are filled with incredible experts who help people navigate how to best use their first paycheck, how to pay off student loans, even where to invest your money, even if it's only a little bit for now. Learning about how your money can work hard for you is one of the most empowering things that you can do. You'll thank yourself and your credit union later. Credit unions are the proud sponsor of Your 2 Cents, the podcast. So we'll go back to me before I lost my job, before I had to find something new. Is there anything that, you know, I was living paycheck to paycheck before this happened? Is there any suggestions that you can give for people in terms of saving money that, well, they're already feeling financially stretched? Like, you know, you feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck. Is there any tips that you have for those people to have that fund or something?
Absolutely. And I would say you had that feeling, but I think a lot of us have that feeling right now. The finances, the state of the economy in Canada is ever changing, and it is very common for people to feel like they're, even if they have the job that they want, the job that they thought would set them up for success, to still not feel like they're ahead. So very, very common. My biggest tip would be to treat savings like you're paying a bill. So every month, every 2 weeks, whatever format works for you, find a way to set aside some money. If it's $10, if it's $20, if it's $50. You can set up automatic withdrawals from your account, your checking or spending account, into your savings account so that you don't even have to touch it. And as little as $20 or $50 a month can make such a huge difference. Anytime we have any little bit of extra cushioning, it just makes us feel better in case the unexpected happens, helps set us up for success. So any way that you can find to transfer that money is going to be huge and pay off.
Okay, yeah. I should have been doing that. I should have.
Well, and it's hard when you're living paycheck to paycheck. That extra money, like I remember being so scared of even moving money around into different things because it was like, what if I need that? And I definitely had times when I was younger where I was spending to the last dollar in my account because that, and you knew like it's gonna be midnight, I'm gonna be fine tomorrow, but like to be used, like tapping your debit card or whatever in those moments is, your heart is racing. It's the scariest thing.
Oh yeah.
And I think like, I I wish that I had listened to more advice about saving when I was younger, because I didn't end up starting to be able to save until I was much further along in my career. And that's and then you feel ashamed of like, I should have done it sooner. Why wasn't I doing this ahead of time?
Yeah.
I don't know enough. But that's also why we're having these conversations, because the world is more expensive. We're also not of our parents' generation anymore, where we're getting into a job and staying in it for 40 years. Like, that's just not the world that we live in. And so I think there's a bit of shame too about like, you're going to take a job to bridge you a gap for 6 to 8 to 12 months. Are you crazy? Why aren't you going to find another job that you're going to be in forever? But that's not the world we're working in. So I think you also have to think about like, is there a need that's going to help me sleep at night because I'm paying my bills? Is there the long term, but I'm going to promise myself that I'm going to still focus on the long term, and then also go like, I will put that $20 aside. I think finding it and forcing yourself to really think about where you're spending, to go, do I actually need that thing, or should I be putting that $20 away a month? Because it will build up, and I will have $100 that could go towards a grocery bill if I really needed it when that time comes.
Another thing I would add to that as well is there's lots of really great savings options which can also reduce your taxable income each year. So that means that you're going to pay less income tax, so you're going to be owing less money to the government every year. Things like TFSAs or tax-free savings accounts are a really great option to grow your savings, and it doesn't matter, how much or how little you're putting aside in there, it's tax-free. So those are really great options to investigate as well.
Those are the acronyms that are also so scary.
I know.
What does it mean? But if you
know.
talk to someone about it, I think it all goes back to like, talk, because it's really like the key to unlocking all of it. Talk to a career counselor. I didn't know until you told me, before we actually got on this conversation, about SMU actually having a program for their graduates to say, for 3 years, you've got this resource here. Call your alumni. Like, if not even if you went to SMU, if you went somewhere else, call your alumni, call your schools, find out the resources that are there. Go talk to local organizations to see what's in your community, because sometimes it doesn't even have to be a career professional. It just needs to be someone who's going to help you reframe your situation and go, oh my gosh, Alicia, you're so good with people. You know what you could be doing? This thing. And all of a sudden your light bulb lights up and you're like, oh yeah, I could be doing that. I never even thought about that before.
Yeah.
Which I think is really,
On
really
that note
helpful.
too, you just reminded me that the alumni offices at most universities have these benefits. And talking about savings, you might be able to save on insurance for your car, your home. There might be discounts on groceries. There are ways that you can take advantage of that, and I forgot to do that. So that might be something, if you're a student out there or a graduate, that you could take advantage of.
Yeah.
And even if you're in university, if you're still an active student, I did not take advantage of my benefits at all while I was still in school, and I really regret not doing that, because I think people are missing out on so many benefits, like mental health and even just like dental and all these other things. Like, prioritizing that while you're still in school and thinking about your future, I don't know, I just think it's like a really great thing to tap into, rather than just leaving it there. You're paying into it, so you might as well use all those tools that are there, for sure.
Yeah, I think about like when you just mentioned like putting that $20 or $50 away, like, and I think in those moments you can feel so like, but I need that $50 or I need that $20, when realistically I've never not been able to survive with what I have. So if I just didn't have it, I probably would have figured it out, and probably would have felt a lot more secure when I was calling my, debtors to say that I couldn't pay payments. I would have had a little something. Just something there would have definitely helped those situations. So I'm doing much better with savings now. I will put that out there, but I could probably be putting more aside and just getting back to that, like figuring out how to like live with what I have versus,
It's a good point you raised too about the living with what I have. And Sylvia, I was really resonating when you were saying, I was younger, and I can remember, wanting to only put $9 of gas in my car, but accidentally doing 10 and thinking that was going to be the end of the world. And so, I sit here in a position as a financial expert, but I have been on the other side too. So I think having the conversations, the financial literacy, finding people who can give you a couple tips and tricks to help you get through those harder times is going to make a huge difference. And just like you, Alicia.
I didn't want to talk to people about financial planning when I didn't have money, because I didn't think that I deserved to. Like, I don't have money to put into anything, so why would this person want to spend their time talking to me? And I think that's such a misnomer as well. It's like, no, talk to people when you have nothing, so that you can build up and get there. And whatever your idea of like a more secure financial situation means, people out there will help you. But I think being afraid of it, it's like all of these things we're talking about, it just will keep you in the dark for longer. And the minute you open yourself up to going, okay, I didn't know how to use a drill a year ago, but I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
Why don't I learn about money? And then when I have more of it to do something with, I'm equipped to have those conversations in a more intelligent way. Because the first time I actually had money to invest in something, I was like a dog with a tail between my legs. I was like, hi, I know nothing. I'm so sorry. I'm over 30. This is so embarrassing. And they're like, cool, we don't care. You're here now, so let's have the conversation. So like, talk at any time, whether you've got it or not, I think.
I do find it really funny too. Like we go to school to like, it's exciting to like learn new things, but then the minute you become an adult and you don't know something, it's shameful. It's not like exciting to learn about. It's like, I don't know this, but like we really truly didn't learn a lot of this stuff. Like we didn't get that. I didn't learn how to do my taxes in school. Like I didn't learn what savings was. I learned what a credit card was.
Right.
But I didn't learn what a savings was, and I didn't learn that stuff. And I find that transition so funny to be like, it's almost shameful when we don't know about something, when realistically, like, it's exciting to learn about that stuff and be in those spaces and have that skill that you just didn't have before.
It's another day of not using a squared plus b squared equals c squared.
Yes.
But how do I pay my taxes and how do I get out of debt? Like, I don't know what I'm doing.
It is so true.
Yeah. I've never used y equals mx plus b in my life.
Yeah.
I barely used it in
No.
high school, let alone in my finances.
I'm impressed you even remember that.
I know.
Me too.
I know.
I don't
That-
remember.
yeah.
It's a trauma of math class.
Yeah, seriously. But you said the word curious earlier, and your face lit up when you used that word. I was like, ooh, it's such a curiosity, I think, is like such an incredible quality in a person. And you're so right. Like, we stop being curious about things that actually matter. Being curious about your money, like, that's a really important thing to be curious about. And so I don't know. I think I nerd out over this stuff now because I wasn't curious about it for so long. I think I was curious. I just didn't feel like I should act on my curiosity.
Yeah.
It's like, no, don't. Never. I feel like this has become a PSA for like the more you know, but
Yeah.
it's just actually the truth.
That's a good leeway into a question for you, Vicki. So, do you see a trend with students picking careers or things that are going to afford them more financial stability? Like we talked about that curiosity part, and do you see people leaning away from that curiosity and sticking to stability over curiosity?
I have to say yes, absolutely.
Do you blame them?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, I don't blame them. We're in a time of a lot of economic instability.
Yeah.
Things are expensive, and they've gotten increasingly expensive even over the last 2 years that I've been at St. Mary's. So yes, I do see a trend there. There's, this is a sad statistic, but there are more students than ever using our student food bank. Life is more expensive. I have a lot more conversations with students about the affordability of rent. Where do I live? So those pressures are real, and they really do impact career choice. And there's a lot more questions about how can I find a job that'll make me money. Now, from a career counseling perspective, one of the things that we often talk about with students is there are like objectively maybe some careers that we could talk about that would give you more money. But let's talk about the ones that can maybe afford that for you while also playing to your skill sets. Because if I tell you to be an accountant and you're terrible at math, it's gonna feel like you're pushing a boulder up a hill, and your opportunity for career advancement or to feel that you are good at your job are gonna be more limited. And will you actually succeed in that role? Maybe not. So let's try and find the best financially stable option for you that's still within the realm of what you're good at. And that's a difficult thing to explore when you're feeling so much pressure, but we try and help students navigate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's difficult. Like I think about that too. Like I think about that, what that conversation looks like, to have to choose between something that you feel like you might be passionate about and something that's going to make you money, because that's essentially what people are feeling. And there are people, like you said, who are doing everything right, by the book, who have their degrees, who have, owned their home and have those things, that are still struggling to make ends meet. So it's like you said, finding that balance between the two and not feeling that boulder effect, because I think that's where a lot of people get themselves is, yes, this makes me money, but do I feel accomplished, and can I continue to do this for the rest of my life? What does the longevity look like? And
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are pushed by whether it's tradition or like what their family belief is about the job that you should do.
Yeah.
Like I used to get told all the time, like, you'd make a great lawyer. I was like, maybe, but I would hate that. That is not a job that suits me. And maybe I would have been good at that, but I don't think I would have been fulfilled by that. And I don't know that everyone's also driven by being fulfilled in their careers. And so I think if there's also an opportunity to go, you know what, I'm actually someone who doesn't mind going to a job that I get to clock in and clock out, leave it there, and then I'm gonna go and do something really cool on the side. And that's actually where I'm gonna fill my cup. And how I spend my free time is actually where I'm gonna get that, because I've got that stability in my paycheck and my, you know, in that world. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. Like,
That's a good point. And one of the things that I love like the very most about my job is that aspect of curiosity. And when someone tells me I'm super passionate about making music, I want to know why, because underneath that passion for music, maybe there's really a value in, I love putting things together. I love, you know, making something out of nothing. Okay, well, there's more opportunities for you to use that value in a bunch of different settings. So how can we find a setting where that really works for you, where we can meet your financial goals?
Absolutely. And money can't buy happiness. Like, there is something to be said for not necessarily having the highest earning job, but having a job where you enjoy going to and you enjoy what you do, you like the people you work for, you come home with a smile on your face. That to me is invaluable and worth more than gold.
Yeah, my bridge job, my interim job between the two, like I bartended, but then I worked doing accounts receivable, and I remember applying for that job and the lady being like, well, you were making X amount of dollars and this is going to be this amount of dollars, and I'm like, but do I get to leave at 4 o'clock and then nobody talks to me? And she was like, yes. And I was like, that is invaluable to me. Like having that work-life balance that I had not known before was so much more valuable. And I got my holidays off and I got to sit in a cubicle and do my own thing. And like, that might not seem appealing for people, but it really opened my eyes to, again, the value of my mental health, the value of my time, the value of being able to have autonomy over what I was doing. So yeah. Oh, this is just making my heart so happy.
I know, me too. I actually picturing like when I had to come back, like the hockey career doesn't pan out and we end up back with nothing. I went back to serving because I loved it. I was like, this is a skill that I have. I know I can make money. I'm living in a town I've never lived in before. So I need to meet people. And now my husband always jokes that I know more people in his hometown than he does. And I'm like, yeah,
you do.
Because I do. Because I know them all, because I've served them all in some capacity. And I loved it. And it brought me joy in a time that was actually really, really challenging, when I had come from like a very like on paper great marketing job that people were like, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah, now I'm serving tables in rural Ontario. And they're like, what? I'm like, but I'm happy because I'm paying my bills and I'm being self-sufficient, and I'm happy because I'm making meaningful interactions with people every day. And so I just, I loved it. And then we moved here, and I started working at the restaurant that I'd worked at every summer in university. And I was like, these are my people, I love them. And I did that until I was back on my feet again, and I kept a more traditional job, and I picked up a couple shifts serving. And it certainly didn't give me a lot of free time to do other things, but my priority at that point was getting back on my feet. Yeah. So I was like, I'm gonna pick jobs that I'm excited to go to every day. And putting on an apron and getting back on the floor and serving, I loved it.
It is never fun to have to think about the things that could go wrong, especially when so much feels like it is going right. But that preparation is truly just like an insurance policy for your future self.
Absolutely. And Vicki and Shannon did such a great job of making sure that you don't just go to the intrusive thoughts about all the bad things that can happen. It was actually about getting prepared and empowered so that if something bad happens to you, your first reaction is the best reaction rather than just freaking out.
This topic is very near and dear to my heart, and you'll hear that in this conversation. We've all experienced things that have set us back, and Vicki and Shannon give so many good tips and tricks to make sure that you're not hanging yourself out to dry. So stay tuned for part 2.
This is Your 2 Cents, the podcast, proudly made by Bicoastal in partnership with credit unions.